Hi, Dave. Great to meet you.
Hey, Christian, nice meeting you. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. You're the first interview of the day, so you have all of my energy.
Wow, awesome. Well, I appreciate that. That's definitely an honor. So basically, I want to get started and just kind of ask you, where did the idea of Westhampton come from?
Yeah, so I'm born in the Hamptons area of Long Island, east end of Long Island, and whenever I tell people that, there's always this reaction that gets like, oh, fancy,
Yeah,
and but it's actually a very different it's a very different experience in reality if you grow up there. It's for most months a ghost town when I was there, and I was less the person enjoying the beach club and more the person that was putting out the towel, or
okay.
less on Main Street and more of the employee in the bookstore working there. And so it was a very different experience. And I loved the idea of like telling a story that played with that reality versus expectation,
Sure.
and to tell the story or feature the town in the off season,
Sure.
and then have a story that really does embody that gap between our understanding of something and the truth behind it.
Absolutely. So what do you expect audiences to see whenever they walk into the theater, thinking they're going to see these big mansions? What would you tell them? Like, what do you think they're going to actually see once the film starts playing?
Yeah, it's a very nuanced film. It, it's I almost want to use the word small, but I don't mean that in a negative way. But it feels very close to the chest. Even when someone's watching this film, even in the first 15, 30 minutes, you're not totally sure how to even feel about our main character. And it is a story that is about forgiveness, about atonement, about guilt, about reckoning the person you were when you were younger with the person that you are today. And so, yeah, if you think you're going to be seeing a movie about beach club and uh, some fancy real estate, it's a different type of film. But I do think that people will see a lot of their own hometown in this. It's another reason why we decided to call the film Westhampton versus making up a name of a town. We wanted it to feel grounded and to feel almost like in every town. And whether you are born in the Hamptons area like I was, or whether you're from a small town in middle America, I do think that you will see some of your own town in this film as well.
Yeah, I will say it is absolutely a beautifully shot film. I think when the film started and we started getting glimpses of the town as a whole, it was kind of like, wow, I kind of want to live here. But at the same exact time, it just seemed so isolating. Beautiful, but isolating. Was that the intention there?
Yeah. Also, I wanted the audience to be objective in our relationship with our protagonist Tom, who's portrayed beautifully by Finn Wittrock. He's To treat him in a more conventional way, in a more conventional film, it would have been a lot of these close-ups, point of view shots, a lot of inserts about the things that he's handling and dealing with, so that we would feel like we are Tom. This film is filmed in there's a lot of really wide shots, like extreme
Yeah,
wide shots. A lot of scenes play out in single takes, and it allows us to be watching him, but not empathizing with him or struggling to empathize with him, which I think is the town's relationship with Tom as well. And so, trying to figure out how can we merge the language of cinema to the narrative that we're trying to tell in this specific story. And what is helpful is it is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful town.
mm,
When I think
right.
of when we were putting the film together, I was trying to describe to somebody what I wanted that shot to be when he's
Yeah,
walking across the marsh bridge and there's a cop car passes by. And I was like, in autumn, it will look like a painting when he's walking through it. But Tom won't acknowledge it. He won't see the beauty. He's going to take this for granted.
mm,
And so, yeah, it does help when you're doing an ultra wide shot to
sure.
have one of the most beautiful places on earth be the
Yeah, yeah.
backdrop.
I actually love that you brought that shot up because I remember watching the film and when that shot happened, the spacing between Tom and the cop car when it stops and not fully not fully understanding, what's about to happen and what this scene truly means. I think it captured that well, like you said, the beautiful area and that isolating feeling. So great job with that shot because it's a very powerful scene. So I do love that a lot. Now, when it comes to our main character, Tom, what was the process of finding Tom like? I mean, did Finn walk in the room and completely own it? Did you guys have a bunch of people that you thought maybe this guy would be it? What was that like?
Yeah, we were working with a casting director years ago when we were first trying to put this film together
Mm,
in probably 2018. And Finn was a name that they had on their list of like, hey, you should look at Finn Wittrock for Tom. At that point, I was only familiar with Halloween Town 3,
mm.
Halloween Town High,
Yeah,
and his work on
absolutely.
American Horror Story, which are two very different roles
Yeah.
than Tom Bell and Wes Hampton. It was when I went to see a Broadway play, The Glass Menagerie, which had an incredible actor named Madison Ferris, who, like one of the characters in our film, uses a wheelchair. I went to see that play to see Madison,
Mm.
and Finn was the gentleman caller in that play,
Wow.
and to see him in a role that was so different from anything that I had seen him in previous to that
Sure.
uh, was really eye opening. I think watching him on stage, it just clicked like, oh, that's exactly who this should be.
Mhm.
It was so much more restrained than anything I had seen previously, and I knew that we needed that for Tom. That you like him enough, but the restraint leaves a degree of mystery. And so, yeah, we then got in touch with him. He connected with the script immediately. We had a call where he asked some really great questions about the story, about Tom's perspective, and then he was in. And it did take us a few years to put the film together. But when we circled back with him in, I think it was the start of maybe or the end of 2023,
Okay.
he was still interested in being involved, and we were lucky to have him.
Yeah, he portrays it beautifully. It honestly, his emotions, just his reactions to certain things that are happening. I don't know if I could actually see anyone else playing that role. He really embodied that. So I think great casting there. He really, really did own that role.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually think to your point, I think the fact that he's known for such different types of roles
yeah.
makes it even more interesting to watch him in this one.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, American Horror Story. Obviously, he definitely stuck out in that show a lot. So seeing him go from that to this is absolutely incredible. Going into this film, I didn't really know much about it, and I kind of went into it blind, just wanting to go on the journey with this character, and he takes us on that journey perfectly. I feel like I get to know him. There's a lot of, silent moments, and those reactions that you get out of Finn and that Finn portrays is just excellent. So,
Yeah.
um, so you say that West Hampton is a deeply personal film. Was there ever a moment during writing it that you felt this might be a little too honest, or did you feel like it just flowed naturally?
That never occurred to me while I was writing it. But it's definitely been a thing I've been aware of as we've been touring with it or when we're doing film festivals.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, art is an interesting thing in that people often are drawing things from real life. Like
Mm,
I was in writing this, but also like the character Tom is in the film. And the real life people that you are fictionalizing or characterizing, there's an impact to that. And I had never seen it portrayed on screen and loved playing in that space. And I feel like that's one of the things that people have really been connecting with, or at least artists that have been watching this and how they're connecting with it. Like that side of this, I don't feel like is generally talked about. Um, but no, yeah, I wasn't completely aware of it while writing it, though I was always aware of how will the people that these moments might be based on, how would they maybe relate to this? And there were people I had to go to and be like, hey, do you mind if I name a character after you or base this
absolutely.
on you? And there
Yeah.
and like that's definitely true. There definitely are characters that are named after people that I know with their permission. And then there were definitely others that I could not ask.
No, I get it totally. One of the things I really love about the film too is very similar to a line of dialogue that's in the film. What was the creative process or idea behind making the film scenes black and white that we're watching? How did that come
Yeah,
about?
I mean, it was important that the two films feel like they were painted by two different hands.
Mm,
You have to believe that the black and white film that you were watching is not made by me, who's
mm,
making the greater film.
sure.
This film that we're watching is made by this character, Tom. And so we created constraints that that maybe he was working under. We had like given like a budget number, like he made a movie for $20,000. Like it's like so that was in our head too as we were doing it. Like so what could he have done with $20,000? But also we needed it to stylistically be polar opposites to everything else that we're seeing so that it feels more jarring, which I think is sometimes like our relationships with memory. Like
Yeah,
sometimes they are beautiful and welcome, and other times they are abrupt and choppy and a bit more unwelcome. And so by using a different visual language, we were able to play with that a bit more. The black and white film has a very different type of music that accompanies it.
yeah.
It's everything is handheld, everything is super close. Where with us, everything was on sticks. Like
Like the watch this. Yeah,
the camera never moves in
yeah,
the color film. It's we're generally pretty far out and in a wide shot. And if we are close, it's never an extreme close up the way that you see in Tom's film almost constantly.
great.
And I think that separation is somewhat alluring and draws an audience in, and especially as we start learning that there is a gap between the true events that he based his film on
Mm,
and the movie that he made. And I think if it was shot like a documentary, if it was shot in anything that resembles the color film, I don't know if it would sell that as well.
yeah, actually, I love the idea of a black and white film. I think you mentioned, looking back through our memories, and sometimes it might feel like those memories are being played back in like a black and white, somewhat distorted, up close and personal perspective. So I really enjoyed that color technique with the black and white for that film. So continuing on with the story and the idea, you mentioned that there was a friend that passed away when you were in high school, and it kind of became like the emotional foundation of the film. Was that something that you wanted to pull into? Like, what made you say, I need to write a film about this event?
Yeah, I mean, there was a car accident when I was in high school. I was not involved in the car accident,
Okay.
like Tom's character was,
Sure.
but it was a fatal car accident with a very close friend of mine and her parents, and it was a completely avoidable accident that happened in broad daylight in the middle of the day on like Labor Day weekend. And I've thought about her many times over the last, I think it's almost been 25 years since
Wow.
that happened. And I know that she would say, I'm good. We're good. I went with my parents. This, like, don't be upset about this side. But then I think of the gentleman that was driving the other car.
Yeah.
And how does he live with himself, live with that guilt when he can't get that apology, or he can't offer that apology, and he can't get any sort of closure outside of whatever grace he's able to give himself for
Sure.
that. And that is an idea that I feel like I have never been able to shake in the last 25 years. And when I think of that accident, there is this thought that I have towards this other person that was wrong in this accident. And how do you move forward when the people you've impacted are now behind you? And
Mm,
who knows the journey of atonement that man has been on or not. But whatever that has been, he's had to find that in himself. And I think that is so much harder than when you're able to ask for it, or even if you know you can ask for it, and then you're
yeah.
not. There's something in that felt ripe for exploration.
Yeah, that's very powerful stuff there, because you do kind of think about all the people involved. Obviously the person driving that car was not somebody who was in your life, but at that moment in time, even though you weren't involved with the actual accident itself, it has in a way become a part of your life. And thinking about that gentleman possibly looking for forgiveness, definitely creates a very powerful story. So I can definitely see why you pull from that. In the movie, Tom spends the film returning home physically, but while he's there, Emotionally, he kind of resorts back to being that reckless teenager that he left behind. Do you think that we ever really leave those versions of ourselves behind? Do you think that sometimes returning home and getting back with people that were a part of our life, that moment in time, kind of brings that back out of us? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. The idea of you can't go home again is, I think we're all aware of that phrase, and feel it in some way whenever we go back home. Um, I I don't have my childhood home that I grew up in anymore. And I definitely feel like I, in many ways, grown beyond that person that I was. But I know that, like, when I could go back home and my parents were still there,
Mm,
there are you do you sit in the chair that you sat in at a dinner table when you were four, and there is some unspoken shift that happens where you almost are suddenly playing these, which almost feel sometimes like outdated roles, uh, and in that way, I think there is always a little bit of a regression that happens, or you go home and you're fighting against that feeling and feeling like
yeah.
I don't want this person, I don't want the bully to see me as a victim anymore. I'm not a, like I feel like
Yeah.
there's some challenge that happens there. But yeah, I mean, if you're asking about my own experience, I would say yes, I do think that there's always some degree when you go back home and you see the person you had a crush on when you were 14, and even I'm a 38-year-old man, I will still be like, oh no, I can't. You
Yeah.
can't.
Don't look at me.
Close your
I
eyes,
get it.
disappear.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do think, just from my own personal experience, watching this film, when I do go back home to my childhood home, which I fortunately am able to from time to time, memories click and you do run into people that were a part of your life and it kind of brings back that version of ourselves, whether we give into it or not is completely up to us and where we're at in our life now. And obviously, Tom was definitely really going through it. So I think that leads to my next question. Do you see Tom as someone who is seeking forgiveness from others, or do you think he's trying to validate forgiveness for himself?
I mean, I think that gets to the journey of the film.
Mm,
I think that he's felt so ashamed of this thing that he just can't have, that he's dealt with it in all the wrong ways. I
sure.
have to imagine why it's so difficult for him to watch this movie that he probably had to. I'd imagine he spent years making it. If it looks anything like me making this film, it took me years to
Right.
make that movie. Uh, and to not even be able to face it.
Mm,
Well, how we see how he's treating it in the opening scenes of the film. It must have been so clear to him that he had just dealt with all these things in the wrong way. And so, yeah, it's a challenge to, I think self atonement and self forgiveness is a part. It's an aspect of forgiveness that we don't talk about often,
mm,
and I'm not exactly sure why. I do think it's the hardest to attain, and I think that is what Tom realizes over the course of this film, and realizes that it's not just the other forces around him that are stopping him. It
mm,
really is his own blocking of progress. That's why I think the opening shot of the film is in the metal confines of a bathroom stall. And then
yeah.
at the end, he's not in an open field and problems are solved. He's in this beautiful sheet maze on a beach. The
Yeah.
walls are actually probably still just as close together, but there's now like a flexibility to them.
Mm,
And he's able to maneuver and maybe be able to walk through. And so I don't think he solves anything for himself, but I think he becomes aware that there is something that he needs to progress through on his own.
whew, yeah, that is a absolutely great way to put it. I felt that watching this film. You mentioned the opening scene, being in the restroom, the bathroom stall, tough exterior, and him trying to once he leaves the bathroom, he's basically looking for an exit. He's looking for a bunch of doors, and everything just kind of seems locked. And he finally finds where he needs to go, and he's locked in, and he seems very reluctant to want to stay there and watch the end of this film. It's almost like the art that he created, he wanted to put out into the world and just maybe let it go. And now he's face to face with reliving that exact moment that he's been avoiding and looking for that forgiveness from. So I definitely feel that visually. I think that was perfectly made. And I love the flashing of Westhampton on the sign in the film in the black and white. There was just something very visually haunting about that. I think that whole scene was just shot beautifully. So I do want to say great job with that. And I love how you described the ending of the film with the sheets and that flexibility because like you said, we don't really get a full resolution, but I don't think that was the point. And, capturing that feeling of finally being able to maybe accept it and move about a little bit more freely and realizing what you need to do to work on yourself. I think that was captured beautifully with that last scene. So you've obviously filmed this movie a couple of years ago, and it's been essentially a year since it premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. What was it like for that first screening in front of a large audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's surreal, not being an overused word, it's definitely an appropriate one to have everybody in the, like, especially the first screening that we had. It was so many individuals in the audience were family, were friends, the crew of the film, the cast, almost the entirety of our cast was there. And a lot of the community that had embraced us making it showed up. And so to be able to share the film finally, was quite cathartic for us. And it kickstarted a process that I love, which is you spend so much time creating something to try to tell a story or try to make someone feel something. And then when you release it, the relationship changes. It's no longer about what I think I'm doing or what I'm trying to do. And it's now about how it is received.
Sure.
And to engage with different people, hearing what they took from it, or maybe what they created, or whatever. Maybe they put their own story on it when they watch it. Hearing that has been the most beautiful thing. And one example of that is there's a scene toward the end of the film where Tom finally is having the conversation that he's stopped himself from having for all these years. And the camera goes inside the house, and we see them on a porch talking to each other, but we don't hear it. We're not privy to what that conversation actually is now that he's finally able to have it. And it's conventionally not the most cathartic way to cathartic moment of the third act of the film. But I think a lot of people that have seen the film, have connected to it, saw what we were doing, put their own narrative in that moment. They think of it's also, we sit in it for a while. It's almost a 40-second shot though we can't hear anything.
Yeah.
It's enough time that we start to think of the conversations that maybe we would be having with the person in our life that we haven't apologized to, or can't apologize to. And that to me has been some of my favorite parts of the release of this film, and something that as we release in theaters this weekend and going to hopefully theaters beyond that, but that is something that continues to evolve.
Yeah, that was my next question. Just asking, you use the word surreal, which I think is a very valid thing to say about this film, and, releasing it into the world after spending so much time with it. Now that it's getting into theaters and you're seeing it connect with different audiences in different cities, what do you hope that the audience gets walking away from this film?
Yeah, I was just reading a comment that someone wrote on Letterboxd in Hungarian. It was I had to use ChatGPT to help me translate it. And it was clear to me that this person got the film, that it's not the most universally approachable film, though I do think it deals with universal ideas of, like I was saying, the gap between who we were and who we are today. I think that's a universal idea. But this is someone that clearly understood the movie that we had made and the tools in which we had to execute it. And I could feel how much this story meant to them, in the writing of this comment. That's what I love about all of this. The negative comment that you might get that someone that doesn't understand the film, that doesn't do anything for me. I'm sad that it didn't resonate with them. But when you find people that it does, and that it speaks to them or something that they've gone through, this is very much a movie for those people. And yeah, I'm excited for an audience to engage with it and to connect with it, and to hopefully have conversations with their friends afterwards about how they feel about it, and maybe some things that it opened up in themselves.
Absolutely. I was actually, I was in a pretty bad car accident about 5 years ago. So I was the driver of the car. And this film definitely hit some spots, some emotional cues that, sometimes maybe you kind of tuck away a little bit. Watching Tom's journey of that, accepting and the forgiveness, whether it be with other people or within himself, I think is beautifully portrayed. And if people, even people who haven't lived through something like that, I hope that some people can open up their mind to the art that storytelling is something that happens to people on, unfortunately, a regular basis, and that people do go on that journey to try to find themselves. And I think this movie perfectly represents things like that. So even if anyone who's going to see this film doesn't fully understand the heaviness of what is being told, I do hope that at some point in time in their life, that if they experience anything like that, that they're able to kind of go on that journey that Tom did. And even if you can't fully accept or forgive, you're at least open to the vulnerability of accepting a little bit better and maybe finding that forgiveness for yourself. So I think you did a great job of bringing this story to life. I know I mentioned it several times, but just definitely wanted you to know that, yeah, I think it was beautifully portrayed. So I do hope audience.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do hope that audiences connect with it. I know that I did for many reasons, and I think the way that it was filmed just really brings you on that journey perfectly.
I appreciate you helping spread the word. I mean, that's how indie films survive. People tell their friends, their family to go see it. It doesn't have the backing of a huge studio, so conversation, word of mouth is incredible. So thank you for those kind of words.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, film, I think, is such a powerful art. Visual storytelling is something that is important, and when you find the right people to tell the right story and portray those characters or moments or whatever it might be, is a very powerful thing. And this movie is definitely one of those things. So if you could look back at your younger self when you were in high school, what would you tell the younger version of yourself about what your future is going to be like? What advice would you give?
My answer would have been very different if you asked me that a few years ago.
Sure.
I do think now I probably wouldn't tell them anything. I think that the journey that I've been on and continue to be on, I love the mystery of it, and I love not knowing my own potential in many ways and having to explore that. I think the mistakes that I make only better inform the right decisions I make down the line. And I think if I could say anything, I would just say, hey, you're going to be okay. Just keep doing the thing that you believe in.
Absolutely.
I think telling my parents I want to be a filmmaker as a 13 wasn't the most welcome thing they'd ever heard. But maybe I would tell that to them too. Like, hey, he's fine.
Well, you're definitely you're doing something great for yourself, and this movie is full proof of that. I really liked your answer because that's the perfect thing to say. Go on the journey, live the life, make the mistakes, because you're clearly where you're supposed to be at right now, talking with me about this film that's opening up very slowly in different cities and hopefully more and more. And that's amazing. So Christian, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about your new film. I wish you the best of luck in everything, and hopefully I'll see a lot more from you soon.
Thank you. I appreciate all those very thoughtful questions.
Thanks, Christian. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.